Okay, we're live. And I am just going to set up my phone because I want to make sure that everybody can hear me. So bear with me 1 second. I think we should be good. And if we're not, then hopefully someone will swing in and let me know. But we're going to start with the video. Okay, that was fun. And that was relevant. Bear with me just a second while I get my screen all adjusted. Okay, there we go. I think we should be good. Okay. The name of that song is Rush E. Came out a few years ago. And what's funny is that the version of that song that you just heard has a bit of a backstory, which I won't go into all of the details on. But I will say this: the guy who you heard playing it um, built a little bit of notoriety. Essentially, Rush E is a song that is impossible to play correctly. If you listen to the version that was just played, that guy's grade for playing Rush E perfectly would be an F. Why am I saying that? Well, Rush E is written so that you'd need 9 people to be able to play the song perfectly. There are points in the song where all 88 keys on a piano are depressed at the same time. So unless you have enough fingers to play, the all note, you cannot play Rush E perfectly. You'll find lots of memes online. I've seen memes where three people are trying to play the song at the same time and they still can't play it perfectly. It's impossible. But it does set up this idea of a standard, an impossible standard that isn't humanly possible to meet. We'll probably touch on some of the story, the particular person who was playing it, because there's an interesting storyline behind how he got to the point of playing that video. But the idea is this standard that you simply cannot meet. And the one thing I will say about the story is that the guy whose name is Fanchon became popular because he was criticizing someone who was playing Rush E and essentially saying he didn't think they did a very good job. When people challenged him to try to do better, he actually went and did it. And people were blown away by how good a player he was. He probably planned that, but nonetheless, he made a promise and he delivered against it. And that led me to Rush E and Fanchon. Just taking a quick look at parabiology here, seeing what he said, because I'm glad he can make the show. I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to make it today. Had some good movement in my back today, hopefully much better later this week, doing a lot of therapy. That tune is hardcore. Oh, yeah, that tune is hardcore. Glad to see that your back is getting better. I remember what we were talking about there. So, Godspeed in your recovery. Yeah, I really appreciate you showing up, knowing that you're working through some things right now. Now, but coming back to the show for a minute. Oh, I will make an aside. At some point in this show, there may be a cut in because there's a guy who said he wants to have a debate about something that does become related. If you're looking at some of the videos I was posting, I was doing a video this week about a movie that came out on Netflix, Rebel Moon. I didn't like the movie. I thought it was pretty crummy, but there was someone who really disagreed. And he may jump in, and I told him to show up for the debate. Because what it's touching on is this whole notion of a standard. I felt like his expectations in movies were too low if he thought that was a good movie. So we're going to see if he shows up and if he wants to have the debate. And if he does, then we'll weave that in because it's all related. Title of tonight's show is, when did you decide to become a passport bro? Or did you? And what I want to do is get into a conversation about what I've seen and with people I've talked to, what I experienced myself. But also I want to talk to guys and I want to understand, if you haven't decided to become a passport bro, kind of where are you? What questions do you have? Not everybody wants to be a passport bro, but I think there are lots of guys who just don't realize what's available. And that's why I'm here. I want guys to make informed decisions. And I think that if you understand what is possible, it will change your mind about what you actually want to pursue. Now, all of that said, talking about standards, one of the things I want to talk about is what seems to be the standard today. And it's becoming a big problem that's leading more and more guys to become passport bros, which is that when you look at the standards of the modern woman, their standards are pretty much perfection. Ask women what would make them happy today in a husband, and their standard is practically perfection. It's Rush E or nothing. Go on dating shows and listen to what women are asking for, and they're asking for guys who are incredibly wealthy, incredibly handsome, incredibly generous, and are interested in dating a woman who is very normal looking, maybe a little bit overweight, maybe has a kid, maybe is a bit argumentative. They're asking for something that is impossible, but that is the standard. And if they can't get that, then they feel like they don't want to get married to someone because they'd be settling. There's a recent video that gained some notoriety. I don't know if it's fair to say it went viral, but it was a woman in Atlanta. She was complaining about the lack of options in men for her to choose from in Atlanta. Now, I did some stats on this because I just wanted to know, I'd heard things about the ratio of men to women in Atlanta, and I wanted to look. And what I found was the ratio of men to women in Atlanta is pretty comparable with the rest of the nation. This is a black woman. The ratio of black men to black women in Atlanta is fairly comparable with the rest of the nation. So the notion that there aren't men doesn't make sense. But what she talked about was top tier men. She wanted men who she felt were worthy, nines and tens, essentially. Guys who were successful, guys who were handsome, guys who were tall. And the funny thing is that if you looked at the woman, she wasn't an ugly woman. She wasn't a beautiful woman. She was a very normal looking woman. Give her face a 5. She looks just like everybody else you'll see. When you look at her physique, she was a little overweight. So, for the sake of argument, let's be kind and say that her physique was a 5, just to make the math easy. But if you saw the video and you said she's not a 5 physically, I'd be hard pressed to really disagree. Here's a woman who's a 5, very normal. But her expectation is that a guy who's a 9 or a 10 is who she deserves. So she's complaining on a video about her inability to find the caliber of men that would be worth her time. She's looking for Rush E, and it simply doesn't exist. I used this example. I talked about it last week, or actually 2 weeks ago, since we all were traveling, we had vacations last week. But it kind of comes back to this idea. You're standing in the middle of Times Square. There are 10,000 women there, including you. And you ask a woman, how many of those women are you prettier than? She's saying that she's somewhere in the middle. She's prettier than 5,000 other women. Okay, that's fine. It's probably a pretty fair assessment. But the guy she wants is 1. When you look at all of the criteria they have, the guy they want is 1. They're 5,000. So it begs the question, in these 10,000 men, there's only 1 who fits all of your criteria. And there are 4,999 women ahead of you in line. So why is he going to skip all of them to come to you? Now, I know the answer to that question, and we'll talk about that. But it doesn't dismiss the idea that their standard is perfection. To speak to just how deeply rooted this is, I want to talk about an interview that the late, great Kevin Samuels did that I found fascinating because of the scenario. And it really helped me to understand just how deeply rooted this notion of deserving perfection was in some of the modern women who are struggling on the dating market today. And as an aside, this is not as I said before, I don't really address women. I'm talking to guys. This is a show about guys becoming passport bros. So all of this is built for that. So if women listen to this and think I'm bashing them, you're wrong. I'm not. I'm just pointing out facts, things that have actually happened and what guys need to do about it. Okay. So back to the Kevin Samuels example. Kevin is interviewing a woman who is in Connecticut. She's 40. She's a successful professional. She lives out in the suburbs. Kevin has a very, unique style. He tends to cut to the chase. He can be rude, but he's very accurate with his assessments. And he's talking to this woman about what she wants. She wants to get married. She wants to have a kid. She's 40 and a half, to be more specific. We'll talk about why. And Kevin kind of goes into the conversation about whether or not she's talked to a gynecologist to understand whether or not she can even get pregnant. Now she has. Her gynecologist has essentially said, you need to have a kid by the time you're 42 or it might not happen. So she's got 18 months. Kevin is pointing out to her how she's wasting her time because she lives in the suburbs. She doesn't go anywhere to meet men, and she's an hour outside of Manhattan. His point is you need to be on a train to Manhattan every morning. You need to be working from coffee shops or wherever you can, going to one of the most metropolitan areas in the world so that you are in the vicinity of men who might be interested in getting married to you. But the notion that you're just going to sit in your home in the suburbs and it's magically going to happen is ludicrous. I think he went so far as to tell her that she needed to jump on the mailman the next time he came through with the mail, because that was about her best bet for finding a man and having a child. She hemmed and hawed, and she clearly wasn't going to pursue the mailman, but she wasn't even going to hop on a train to go down to Manhattan. She was essentially going to sit back and watch her fertility expire because she didn't want to make an effort to actually find someone. In her mind, though she didn't say it, it was Mr. Perfect's job to magically find her. She wanted Rush E, something that is impossible as a standard. But that is what she was holding out for. And I would love to see a Where Are They Now to understand what happened. But I kind of know in that story what happened because the writing was on the wall. The question that comes up is, why are they expecting Prince Charming? And I don't think it's that complicated. The way it goes, and we'll kind of spin this, we'll embellish, well, not so much embellish, we'll play a little game here. When we think about how children are introduced to the idea of relationships, this is all over the world, but especially in areas like here where we've got Disney. The notion of how relationships work, the notion that is first introduced to children goes something like this. There's a maiden who lives in obscurity. She gets noticed one day by a handsome prince who's come to the land. He's so smitten by her that he's going to do anything he can to win her heart. He pursues her, he slays dragons, he professes his love to her. And all she has to do is decide that, yes, you are worthy of me, a maiden. You're the prince. I'm some maiden who happens to be pretty. You got to come earn it. And that gets rooted into the psyche of lots of women and leads them to, ultimately, stories like a Lolo Jones, who I think is a poster child for the age of modern women. A woman who was one of the most beautiful women, incredibly successful woman, incredibly fit woman, a virgin. This is a woman who, by all accounts, had just about everything a guy could want to check the box on. Yet, she's aging out. She's freezing her eggs. She's worried about whether or not she'll ever find a man. She's had tons of suitors. And let's face it, she's famous. She's had tons of high-end suitors. And she's talked about it in her show. James Beatty, welcome to the show, my friend. Hello, just tuned in. Yeah, come on in. We are looking for as many people as want to participate in this conversation. I hope you enjoy what we got to talk about. So when we look at Lolo Jones, knowing who she is, knowing how many people have approached her with interest in relationships, it's pretty obvious why Lolo Jones never got married. She never found a guy who she thought was good enough. But when you look at the types of men who pursued her, you have to ask the question, how can none of these guys be good enough? Well, it's simple. Her standard was perfection. If you weren't Rush E, you weren't good enough. And nobody's Rush E. To James's question, what part of Jersey am I in? Or am I from? Well, I grew up in Texas, but I've been living in Jersey for over 20 years now. I live in Hoboken. So if you're familiar with the area, I don't know where you are, James, but if you're familiar with northern Jersey, Hoboken. It's right across the Hudson River from Manhattan, kind of the Midtown area. So, yeah, we've got Lolo Jones who can't find a man who she thinks is worthwhile because no man is perfect. And that's the only thing that she's going to accept. I bring all this up because I was having a conversation with my buddy DL Saint on his podcast earlier this week. And he was making a comment. I tuned in because he was talking about passport bros. And he was I was curious to know where he was going with the conversation. I opened by saying, "Hey, are you hating the passport bros?" We joked around. He wasn't, but he was getting into this notion of passport bros choosing to go overseas to get what they want, and sort of saying, guys can find it here, but they're choosing to go overseas because they're finding it there. And he specifically pointed to me and said, "Hey, the last good man in Jersey could find the woman he wants here, but he's going to the Philippines to find it." Now, I had to think about that for a second. I didn't have time to get into it with him on the show, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that that actually wasn't true. I can find women here, but he was saying find exactly what I want. And I can't find exactly what I want here. That's part of the reason why the Philippines is so appealing. In oversimplifying, what I found is I can find a woman with a nice attitude or who's attractive, but I can't get both in the same package. If she has a nice attitude and she's attractive, she's already married. I warning to any guys who are on the dating market and you haven't hit 40 yet, things get quite crazy after 40. Because one of the things that you don't have to deal with quite so much right now, if you're like 20, early 30s, is women's biological clock. Women who haven't had kids, never been married, and are 40 are very aware of their biological clocks, and their approach to dating can change. They're in a hurry. They've got things they want. They don't care what you have to say. They don't care about your issues. They want one thing and one thing only, a wedding ring, so that they know they've got financial security for this kid that they want to have. And you got to be very careful about that because there are lots of stories about guys who are falling into the trap of getting married in their 40s to a woman who was in a hurry to have a kid. And after they have the kid, the sex stops, the intimacy stops. They get divorced and they get wrecked. You've got to be mindful of how you vet because not everyone who says they want to be married wants to be a wife. There's a difference between talking to someone who wants to be a wife versus talking to someone who's a potential ex-wife. And I think that you have a much better time if you're in the Philippines than you will here. And more to the point, when I look at what I want, which is a woman who I find attractive, which is a woman who will be appreciative of me in the same way that I would be appreciative of her, and most importantly, a woman who's going to be loyal, that's far easier to find in the Philippines than it is to find in the States, which is why guys are going to the Philippines and finding wives within a month or two, despite spending years in the States on coffee dates. Let me see what we've got here. James Beatty chiming in. Frank Sinatra's town, Hoboken. Yep. Town of Frank Sinatra. He's posted all over the place. From Newark, I know where Hoboken, Frank Sinatra's. Yeah, so you know where Hoboken is relative to Newark. Are you in New Jersey, James? Because you're giving some references that would tell me you've probably either spent a lot of time here or you're here now. If you're New Jerseyan, hey, salute. If you're not, no problem. But I'm curious. So, yes, a lot more wifey material in the Philippines than in the U.S. Not all, of course, but a lot more than the U.S. Yes, parabiology, you are absolutely right. This was funny. Ah, James is from Newark. Okay, yeah, you talk like you're from Jersey, so I just wanted to figure out you're not too far away. Um, so I did a video because I did this analysis. I don't remember how long ago this was. It was like 6 months ago or so. But I did a video when I said the juice ain't worth the squeeze. And what I did is I just kind of I compared the population of the US to the population of the Philippines. And I was trying to do something very specific. I just wanted to say, you know what? If I was looking for a wife, would I be better off looking in the United States or the Philippines? Now, I used several metrics, but they were very basic things that were easy to look up. And they were things like, how many people are there in the US versus the Philippines? The US clearly has more. How many women, how many young women? Well, the US has more, but as a percentage, the Philippines started to improve. The Philippines has a younger population than the United States. So you're starting to see kind of a shift in the concentration. Here's where things started to get interesting. When you started to look at things like how open women were to marriage in the Philippines versus the US, well, in the Philippines, women aren't looking to date. They're not looking to hook up. You'll find women 18, 19 who want husbands. They want to be in relationships. These are wives, not girlfriends, not hot girls, wives. And you quickly start to see the Philippines catching up to the United States just as you start to get into wives. But when you further start adding things like attraction, where in the US, the numbers roughly, there's a stat that floats around based on OkCupid research that says that women find 80% of guys unattractive. Basically, the nines and tens are attractive to women, and everybody else is a troll. Um, it's not to say they won't date guys who are not nines and tens, but it does say that those aren't the guys they really want. So when you start factoring in things like who's actually going to be interested in you, the Philippines, despite having a fraction of the population of the United States, had more wives. The juice is worth the squeeze if you're looking for a wife, if you're looking for a serious relationship in the Philippines. You don't have to travel that far to find one. And here's the funny thing, you don't have to take my word for it. Go to TikTok, go to YouTube, just plug in Filipino wives and see what comes back. You will see pages and pages of husbands and wives who are happy, who are enjoying each other's company, who are celebrating each other, who are making fun videos about how in love they are. You will find guys who are finding wives. And I don't just mean any old wife. I'm talking normal Joe Blows with young, thin, energetic, attractive Filipinas who are happy that they have a husband. I was watching a video where I was just watching this one this morning. There's a guy, he's regular guy, got a little beer belly, balding on top, wearing his glasses. He's about 45 ish, married, married to a Filipina who was about 24, tanned, long hair. She's sitting on his lap. She's so happy that she's got her husband. And they're reminiscing about how they met. And he's basically saying, the first time he saw her, he was smitten. He couldn't believe that this woman who was so attractive wanted to give him the time of the day. And he didn't realize that she really was interested in him until he did something that she didn't expect, which was this. Now, this guy was hokey. He sent her like essentially a love message every day at lunchtime, letting her know that he was thinking about her, all this stuff. And he did it every day at lunchtime, predictably. One day, he fell asleep, middle of the day. I don't know why he fell asleep. He just said he fell asleep. So he didn't send her the message that day. That's the first day he didn't send it. And when he woke up, he had these angry messages from his Filipina. She wasn't angry that he was a bum. She was angry that she wasn't getting the affection from this guy who she cared about. And he mentioned that that was the first time that she actually said that she loved him. And it's kind of like, where are you? What's going on? Why haven't you messaged me? I've come to expect these messages from you and you're not delivering. Now, this guy is happy because his girlfriend is getting on his case about not showing enough affection. Yet this woman who is young and beautiful and happy to be with him is telling him he needs to make sure he shows the level of attention that he's been showing. So she's not looking at his daily messages as hokey. She's not looking and feeling like he's some chump because he's romantic. No, she appreciates that. And I want you, I want guys to look at these kinds of pictures because I want you to say, look, okay, let me look at this guy. Yeah, this is a very regular looking guy. I could see myself, being as appealing as this guy. Now let me look at this woman who he's with. How does she stand out? This woman was a 7 minimum. If I'm grading hard, I would say she's a 7, but you might rate her an 8. He's rating her a 10. And that's normal in the Philippines. That's what you have access to in the Philippines. And for, people out there, if you look at kind of dating, here's the thing that I think women are doing that men need to consider. Women are setting their sights on Prince Charming. They want, their rush E perfection or nothing. As guys, we're generally more easily satisfied. Most of the guys I know, we don't have 30 items on our list. We've got like 4. Give me these 4 things and I'm happy. I'm good. Maybe we should start getting longer lists. Because if we're going to the Philippines, we'll start finding women who deliver so many more things than we ever thought about. And that can lead us to really raise the bar on what we want. Let me come over to some of the super chats. I want to make sure or not super chats. Sorry. I'm clearly not there. Just some of the chats. See what's going on. So James Beatty came in with a yes, indeed on Newark. Yep. Born and raised. Cool. What have we got from parabiology? Women in the Philippines are ready to be married a lot earlier in general and don't wait until post 30. Oh, absolutely. I met a woman in the Philippines. I was talking to a woman in the Philippines who basically felt like she was an old maid because she was 27 and she wasn't married. The feeling I got from her was that culturally, you hit late 20s and you're not married, and people start looking at you like you're, spoiling milk. You're not spoiled, but you're kind of turning sour. There's the idea, I think it's the Chinese culture, where women who hit 28 get classified, societally as leftover women. Like you got to 28 and you're not married. Culturally, that's considered old maid kind of thing. In a lot of other cultures, in cultures where, hooking up and sleeping around and being a hot girl is not the norm, the expectation is women get married younger. Women generally still want the same things. They want tall, handsome, successful men. But especially when you go to other cultures, you are a tall, handsome, successful man. Keep in mind that the US dollar is one of the strongest currencies in the world. So most of the places where you can travel to in the world, you're successful. If you pick where you go selectively, you're tall. And you're different than the native inhabitants, so you're exotic, and that makes you attractive. It is very easy to deliver on what women want if you travel. And while some women will complain that you're going out to exploit people, which isn't true, it's just them being hateful, the fact of the matter is that the guys who are in the NBA can walk around and they can enjoy a very comfortable life because women throw themselves at NBA players since they want the resources those guys have. Okay, I'm not faulting you for that. I'm going someplace where I'm more like the NBA player in their culture. And so the women are doing to me what the women over here are doing to them. And I'm not going to fault them for that either. I want the best choice for me. Let me see. Oh yeah, so Paris says I saw that on the Black Filipino More to Life channel. Yes, he posted that video, and that was exactly what I was reacting to. The woman in Atlanta who basically thought that she deserved a 9 or a 10 when she was a 5 because her standard is perfection. And if you can't play Rush E precisely, she doesn't think you're good enough. Um, what I want to do now is I kind of want to shift. So we've been setting up, going back to the topic. This is about, when you decided to become a passport bro, or are you thinking about whether or not you want to be a passport bro? Let me talk to you about why I decided to become a passport bro. And I'm curious to understand from everybody out there why you guys are thinking about becoming passport bros. Now, parabiology, I know he's already traveling. We're actually, we may potentially be able to get an interview set up because I want him to be able to share his story. If you haven't seen the pics, parabiology has a beautiful woman, a beautiful Filipina, who he's working to bring to the States. It sounds like they're getting pretty close. Um, that's a man who's got pics that make you want to go to the Philippines because you'll say, yes, I want a slice of what he got. That young, beautiful woman who seems happy, who seems excited and appreciative that she found her, potential husband. Yeah, I want that. Take a look at what parabiology's found. See if you don't want something like that. And ask yourself, are you going to find that in the States? Because if you're not going to find it in the States, you shouldn't give up on it. You just need to go to where it's available. But coming back to it. So for me and my story of, how I became a passport bro, I'll kind of weave. I'll answer that when we do the interview. I also came up with some more questions to discuss also. Now I'm looking for, yeah, okay. I know you're working through, your rehab. So on your back. So, when you've got the time, we'll do it. Because this is what I like to do. I'm here to share stories and to help guys understand the potential of the Philippines. I'm not going to say the right guys because some guys are just looking for fun. I think they can go other places and find that. But for the guys who are looking for real relationships, like, nah, you can find them. You don't need to wait around. You don't need to argue and fight with people who seem to think that they're really doing you a favor by going out on a date with you. No, you can find someone who delivers against everything you want and is happy that you want them back. Okay, so my story. Now, I'll start my story of how I became a passport bro by just, stating I'm one of these, I would say, fairly typical passport bros. I was married to a woman in the States. I married a woman who was, she was a successful professional, worked in the medical field. I was a successful professional, worked in the pharmaceutical industry, you know, seemed compatible, all this stuff. For the first couple of years of the relationship, things seemed fine. Had a kid. And after we had a kid, things really started to change. Like, who's this woman that I've married? Because she's suddenly become so difficult to deal with. Suddenly everything's a fight. Suddenly she doesn't believe in being helpful or participating at all. And everything seems to be a long list of reasons to complain about me and everything I'm doing. It's kind of the notion she had a list of 30 things she wanted. I had a list of like 5 things I wanted. She was complaining that I wasn't getting all 30 of the things on her list. I was complaining that I was getting zero. Like, I only have 5 things and I haven't gotten any of them. So we need to figure something out because this isn't balanced and I'm not going to keep doing it. We eventually ended up getting divorced. She filed. Women file 80% of the time. Um, but as I was really trying to understand what was going on, because in my mind, this was a very one-sided relationship where I was the one putting in all the effort to try to make it work. And she was the one who was just sitting around complaining about what she didn't think she was getting. I didn't understand that. I was really struggling to try to figure out, like, what's happening here? How did this turn so backwards so fast? And I saw this video. that was recommended to me called Average at Best. I didn't know who Kevin Samuels was. I didn't know the Manosphere, the Red Pill, any of that. I just saw this video that somebody recommended to me and I wanted to know what it was. And there was Kevin talking to this woman who barged into a show that was not designed for women that particular night. And she just wanted to say what she had to say. And she didn't care about how disruptive she was. You know, she was just being very selfish, not very self aware. And the beauty of that night was that Kevin started telling her things that I already knew, that guys already knew, that we talked about in barbershops and in, kind of our huddled corners, but that we never actually said to women because they wouldn't listen. They'd yell and scream and argue and say it was our fault, but they would never actually stop to listen to what we were saying. Women who are thinking they're tens when they're not. And he's telling her, look, lady, you're average at best. You got a kid and you want a man who's top tier, who's got other choices. Why don't you find someone who's actually on your level, who's average like you? She didn't like it, but she had to listen to it. And that was the part that was so phenomenal. She had to sit there and she couldn't just overtalk him because he could mute her. She was stuck. And that felt so satisfying to see. I'd never been in that situation before and thought, wow, I want to find more content like this. I started exploring more of what was out there and finding, different content, the red pill space, just lots and lots of stuff. And I was listening to more Kevin and understanding, from women who were explaining what they wanted. I was starting to understand their standard. Because what was so interesting to me was that time and time again, women came out and said the same thing. They want a man who's incredibly successful, who's going to let them stay at home and be housewives, but who's also going to give them the freedom to run around and work when they feel like it. It's not going to require them to be, domestic helpers because they don't feel like it, despite the fact that they wanted this man to be a financial provider. It's like, well, wait a minute. You want a guy to give you everything while you don't provide anything in return. That is Rush E crazy. Add to this the fact that not only did they want this, but it was who wanted this. Generally, they weren't hideous women. They were normal women. Sometimes they were overweight. Sometimes they were older. Sometimes they had kids. Sometimes they were incredibly argumentative. And sometimes they had all of those problems. But all of these women wanted Rush E, a perfect man who's not going to require anything of them in return for giving them the world. What does that sound like? Sounds like the story of Prince Charming, finding the maiden in obscurity and doing everything he can to prove himself to her, to win her heart, to make her life easy, while all she does is sit back with her feet up and decide whether he's worthy. Hearing those stories really helped me to understand that the standard in the West was impossible. Sure, you can find women. Sure, you can get married. But the fact remains that the divorce rate in the States is roughly 50%. 80% of the time, those divorces are filed by women, and they're not filed because of infidelity or abuse. No, usually it's filed because of financial reason. They started making more money. He started making less money. The relationship between them changed financially. That financial dynamic changed, and they didn't need him anymore. Now, some people won't like to hear that, but here's the thing. You can Google these stats. You can go to other podcasters who will give you their data and show you their links. You don't have to believe me. You can look this one up yourself. That's what drives marriage and divorce in the States. So if you don't want that, you have to ask yourself whether you want to be married to someone in the States or not. Now, for me personally, I can say with confidence, if I got married again, I would not marry in the West. There is no way I would do that. There's too much risk. It's too easy for someone to divorce you because they just don't feel like it. They can divorce you because they cheated on you and you caught them and they just realize they can divorce you and take part of what you've made as their golden parachute. The laws in the States don't really make a lot of sense, and nobody's doing anything to change them. Nobody's going to change them. So if you get married in the States, you are signing up for a 50-50 shot at a financial disaster. Some people will roll those dice. Personally, I'm not going to do that. Let me come to some of the comments we have. Parabiology. People accused Kevin of being a misogynist, but I think he was really trying to help women by bringing them back to reality, especially for average women who think they were tens. And that's, I'll tell you something. It's funny, Para. I had a conversation with my dad about this. Because when I first started listening to Kevin Samuels, I was talking to my dad about it. My dad and my mom divorced when I was young. I was like 4. And initially, my dad was not a fan of Kevin Samuels. But we had this conversation and he said, I think Kevin hates women. And I said, well, I don't agree with you there, Dad. I think Kevin hates gold diggers. I don't think he hates women. I think part of what he's trying to do is help women understand that they're playing a game of musical chairs. And you got 10 women who are all going after that same one chair. The math doesn't work there. Everybody can't get a guy who's a 9 or a 10. And if you're a 4 or a 5, your chances are even worse. When I framed it that way, my dad kind of looked and thought, I never looked at it like that. And actually, I do agree with your assessment. He became a Kevin Samuels fan overnight when he started looking at it through that lens. It's not about ticking women off. It was just about saying, you want a guy who's a 10 and you're not. You're average at best. So maybe you should aim for someone who's actually on your level, as opposed to on this level that you've decided you want to compete on when you really don't qualify. And then Paris saying they would be much happier if they chose a man on their own level than being alone forever and pump and dumped. And James Beatty, please speak that truth. I like that. Here's the thing I'm not sure about, Para. I mean, I struggle with this. I really do now. And I've kind of gone through this kind of evolution. I've met women. I've met lots of women who are 40 and never been married and don't have kids. And they've got like a couple of years left before their fertility expires. And they're still holding out for Prince Charming. They are still going through dating, assuming that they've got tons and tons of options and tons of time. I mean, real story. I met a woman on a dating app. This is going back. This has got to be like, let's say 15 years ago, before I knew my now ex-wife. We went on this date in Lower Manhattan. And it was kind of a crummy date because, she had a nice face. She was bigger when I met her in person than she was in her profile pics. But I'm at this bar, so it's like, okay, we'll have this date. We'll chat. Maybe she's got a good personality. Maybe she can get back to the weight that she was actually at in the photos that are in her profile. But, I'm here and there was a game on, so we're chatting. She had a cute face. Let's say that her face is like a 6. Her body was like a 4. She had a terrible attitude. She thought she was a supermodel. She's literally sitting in the bar with her phone, taking selfies of herself looking cute. And I'm thinking, I'm on a date with you, and your primary focus is trying to get a cool selfie. You're not that kind of hot. And the message you're sending is one of disinterest. If you can't really invest in the date because you're more focused on showing off the experience on your Instagram, well, you're telling me everything I need to know. This isn't going to go anywhere. But that was her. And it was really surprising to me that she thought she was as attractive as she clearly thought she was. Now, fast forward. This was maybe 6 months ago, which is why I remembered it. I saw her on a dating app and I thought, hey, I know her. Clicked on it. Actually, this was more than 6 months ago. A little bit more than 6 months ago because it was before I went to the Philippines. Um, and that was basically 6 months ago. So I was just kind of curious. We connected. She looked a little thinner, even thinner than she did in her original profile. I thought, okay, she still has a cutish face, but now she's 15 years older. We met, and I kind of did this cheapo date because I thought she had a horrible attitude last time. I'm not spending any money on a good date with her. We can meet at a park because if I don't like her in 10 minutes, I can skip out and I'm at this park that's kind of fun. This Bryant Park in Manhattan. For those who know, I like that park. It's got a great setup. You can get snacks, you can get drinks, you can watch people ice skating at certain times of the year. They have a lot of events. You can make a day at Bryant Park all by yourself and have a great time. Now, when I met her 6 months ago, a little over, I was just kind of curious because I wanted to know, kind of what had happened. In the 15 years since we met up, nothing had really happened in her life. She still had never been married, had never had kids. I got the sense that she was now starting to accept that she was getting older and that she had had these ridiculous standards. So now her attitude was a little bit better. But it wasn't as much of an improvement as I would have expected. I mean, sure, she was friendlier than she had been. She kind of realized that sitting around taking selfies when you're on a date is disrespectful to the person you're on a date with. So she actually made more of an effort to engage and have a conversation. But I didn't see a lot of growth there. So kind of hung out for 30 minutes, enjoyed the sun, and then I was like, hey, I'm gotta go. I kind of made up the excuse. I'm in town, in the city. I gotta go pick up some stuff. So, see you later. She was a little surprised because I didn't ask her for her number. I wasn't going to. Like, no. She sort of suggested, hey, we can kind of reconnect. And I did like the corny, like, oh, okay, give me your number. I'm not gonna call it, but if I tell you give me your number, then I can just walk. If I tell you I'm not gonna call you, then we got to get into this conversation and you might get loud and I don't want to deal with that. So it's like, give me your number. All right, see ya. Never gonna see you again. Um, her story is not uncommon. I've met several women who are 40, early 40s, biological clock is ticking. And when you look at the way they're dating, the only thing that really seems to have changed about how they date is that now they're in a hurry. They want a husband. I ask some women, like, why don't you just go to the sperm bank? Because you're saying you want a husband. What I'm really hearing is that you want someone who's also on the financial hook for a kid that you want to have. Now, to the idea of kind of women being happy and accepting a relationship as opposed to the pump and dump, their heels are really dug in on this idea. I talked to a woman and said, what you're a successful woman, you're a high earning 6-figure professional. You can afford to just go to the sperm bank and have a kid. She was complaining that it was too hard. Oh, if she has to do it all by herself, that's going to be too difficult. I pointed out that 50% of marriages end in divorce. So even if she did get married, that wasn't a guarantee that she wasn't going to be on her own to raise her kid. But what it really boiled down to for her was money. She wanted someone else on the hook for part of the expense of that kid. She wouldn't do it on her own, just wasn't going to try. She was going to age out with no kids rather than just decide to kind of bite a bitter pill and decide that she's going to be a single mom and raise that kid on her own. She just wouldn't do it. Now, I compare that to, like, if I'd had this option when I was younger, if I could like have a surrogate mom and there was a guarantee, it's like you're going to have this kid, but you absolutely positively cannot decide at the last minute that you want to keep the kid. You absolutely positively, there's no financial hook. You're legally required to give me that kid when he's born. I'll pay, we'll set up the contract. If I could have done that and I never had to get married, I probably would have. Because I would have had my kid like younger in life, and I would have been set. I'd have been done. But as men, we don't have that option. I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's wrong. That's just the reality of the situation. But there are lots of women who are aging out with no kids, despite having six figures, despite having kind of a support network. They just won't do it because they don't have the guy who's on the hook for part of the expense. They want rush E, or they'll just accept that they won't get what they want out of life. And as an aside, I looked this up. If you look at the women who age out of fertility without ever having a kid, 97% of them wanted a kid. They just didn't prioritize it. There was a phenomenal study that was done on this. 97% of them wanted it. They just didn't take it seriously until it was too late. So they will die on that hill of give me the prince or give me nothing. And a lot of them are ending up with nothing. Let's see what we got here. So James Beatty came back with, I've been divorced 20. You got divorced 20 years ago. Okay. I'll never do it again. The women believe in Disney fairy tales. It's not real. Yeah, you're right, James. You're another one of the, everybody who's in this channel right now is a divorcee. I'll leave it to parabiology to decide if he wants to get into his story. We're doing an interview, so if he doesn't want to get into it now, it may come up later. But you're divorced. He's divorced. I'm divorced. Here's the thing, though, that I want you to think about, James, and I'm glad you're bringing this up. Okay. You're divorced, and you're saying, I'd never do it again. I'm divorced. I'm definitely never going to do it again in the West. Honestly, if I could go to the Philippines and find the woman who I want and I didn't have to get married to her, it's like, look, move into my house. I'll take care of you. Your life's going to be easy. I just don't want to actually get married. I would do that. I don't really want to be married again. Because when you put that ring on their finger, as I'm sure we can all attest to at this point, things start to change. Once you make that commitment, things slowly start going downhill, and it never seems like it recovers. So I don't want that. I don't know that I will ever do that. Even in the Philippines, I don't know that I'll do that. But I know that if there's any chance that I'm going to do it, it's going to be in the Philippines, because in the Philippines, there are wives. And you'll see guys going to the Philippines and figuring out in a month or two that they have found a wife. Tons of stories of men who are going there and they're not wasting time. They're marrying these women. They're starting lives with these women. These men are happy. So keep that in mind and think about what might be over there in the Philippines. And after you've seen it, then let's have that conversation, because amen. Yes, indeed. Yeah. You might have a different opinion once you see what wives look like. James is saying my relationship with women today is catch and release. Pump and dump. I think women's relationship with men is catch and release too. I'll say this because I was at a business dinner a couple of weeks ago, and one of the guys in our group is this really tall guy. He's built like an NFL tight end. I mean, he's tall. He works out the whole thing. So you got a bunch of us regular guys, and then you got him. He stands out versus the group. Um, and we were getting dinner, some restaurant. I don't remember the name of the restaurant, but it was a business dinner. So it was a nice restaurant, expensive food. It was a fun time. There are these three women at the bar. All three women are looking at this guy. I won't say his name. They're looking at this guy in our group. I'm thinking, what's your plan here? Are all three of you hoping to jump his bones? They clearly were interested. Now, this guy was given, this guy enjoys a pretty comfortable life. He gets to be Giga Chad. He was just relating stories of like the women who he knows and the adventures that he's gotten into. And here are these three women sitting at the bar. They're clearly interested. They would have probably just gone straight up to the room with him if he asked them to. But I just thought, well, there are three of you and there's only one of him. So what's the plan? Is it winner take all and the other two of you just go home crying to yourself? Are you guys trying to mix it up? Or all three of you just going to go up to the room with him if that's what he wants? Like, I don't know what their plan was, but that's kind of the idea here. They knew this guy wasn't going to see them the next day. They didn't care. They just wanted to have some fun, catch and release. To your point, that's the way they play over here, not the way they play in the Philippines. Parabiology came back with James Beatty. A good Filipino would change your mind, especially if you move there, where there is no divorce. Yes, I'm divorced too, but I'm marrying my Filipina because I want kids. See, Paris been there. Paris spent more time there than I have. I've only been to the Philippines once. I've been to the Philippines once. I've been to Indonesia once. I have nothing but good things to say about both places, but the Philippines stood out. Walking through, I always try to frame this up because when you've been, you see it. When I went through the Philippines, every Western guy I saw over there had an attractive young Filipina with him, except for two. One was this guy who looked like he was military, and let's say he's 35. He had a wife who was probably close to his age. So he's 35. She's like 34, 33. And they have these kids. So he probably met her when his oldest was a boy who was about 10. So they met like in their early 20s and they just built a life together. They're happy. They're enjoying their time. And there was one other guy who didn't have a woman at all, but he wasn't looking for a relationship. I could tell by the bars he was at and the way he was approaching women. He was just, trying to catch and release, trying to have some fun. I never saw him with a woman, and I was at that bar. He went to the same bar every night. And I went to that bar like 3 times. He was always there. But I just thought, you're in the Philippines. Why are you hunting for like a Big Mac when there's sirloin steak here? You're trying to play around and have fun with some fun girls, and you're not in Angeles, which is the place that you should go if you're going to do that over there. Like, you're in Cebu. This is the land of wives. You kind of need to think about what you're after, and then you'll probably be happier. That was my thought. I didn't say any of that to him. I just thought the only guy who I'm seeing not have a relationship here is the guy who doesn't seem to be looking for one. Parabiology saying, if I didn't want kids, I wouldn't marry. And see, I understand that. Mine is more of, if I marry a Filipina, like if I marry a woman in the States, she's probably going to be, well, let me not say marry. If I'm dating a woman in the States, she's probably going to be 40 plus. That's just society here. If I'm in the Philippines, I'm going to get a woman who's like 27, 28, no kids, never married. And I'm going to assume that she wants kids. Now, if I got a hot 28-year-old and she wanted some kids, especially over there where the cost of living is cheap, hey, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with having kids. I just don't really plan to do it. But I would if I had a hot Filipino. Sure, you need some kids. That'll make you happy. You're going to be this phenomenal wife for me. And really the cost is have a couple of kids. who you're going to probably do more in helping take care of than I am, because I'm going to make sure I got all the, we're going to have food stocked and bills paid, and I'm going to participate, but I just think she's going to do more because that's the way they're built. That's their culture. So yeah, if I was in the Philippines, I would probably end up having a couple of kids with some beautiful young woman. Um, However, I know that the earliest I can go to the Philippines is like, it's going to be like a good 6 years before I could move to the Philippines permanently because of the family I have here and the things that I need to do. So, 6 years from now, I might be singing a different song. But for now, it's like, okay, it could work. I don't necessarily know how that would work specifically. What's ideal for me right now would be to find a Filipina who's actually interested in coming to the States, because it's easy for me to bring them here. Not as easy for me to go there. I have to go there on vacations. I've got smaller windows. Someone who could move here or stay here for a couple of months, like I bring you in for a couple of months. You want to go back and see family? Fine. Like I got no problem with that. I could make that work. I just have to find the person who's got the right mindset. And, if I find her and she's interested in that, then I can make that happen. Yeah, and one day you might see me streaming, and I'm like, "Hey, here's this beautiful Filipina who I met and who's now living with me in the States, and we're building a life." That would work. Um, and then James is coming back. Thank you. I'm 63. My marriage years are over. Amen. Yes, indeed. Yeah, I get you, James. I do. But here's the thing: I'm still gonna say, if you're in the Philippines, you've got a beautiful 28-year-old Filipina, slender, pleasant, always happy, always excited to spend time with you. And what she wants from you is a wedding ring. And she can't divorce you. There's no divorce in the Philippines. She can't divorce you. She doesn't want to. She just wants to spend her life with you. I think that you start to look, and I think that you might start to ask yourself, is this worth it? Like, if you met a woman who was a wife, you might decide, you know what? This might be worth it. I've got major issues with getting married, but I haven't actually seen a wife. And now that I'm looking at an actual wife, well, maybe I do want to get married, because maybe I want to make sure that I give her the confidence in my intentions. So that's just a thought. That's just kind of something to think about. But kind of going back to way back, because we went on a tangent to me becoming a passport bro. Now, after going through, kind of seeing Kevin Samuels and really starting to understand the space, I did something interesting. I went on this dating show called Kendra G. And I didn't, I went on one day, the lobby had space. So I hopped in the lobby. I just thought, oh, okay, let me see if I can get on the show. I didn't expect to. You got like 10, 20 people in the lobby. You just hop on, and then the next thing you know, bam, I'm on her show. I was surprised because I've never tried to get on her show before. I've heard people on her show talk about how they've been waiting for weeks. 10 minutes after I joined the show and tried to get on, I'm in. So I did an interview with her, or she did an interview with me, and I just kind of laid out what I was looking for. It wasn't as fully laid out. It could have been cleaner in the way I laid it out, but I covered all the major points. Basically, I said, you know what? I'm a reasonably successful guy. I live right outside Manhattan. I'm looking for a woman who I would enjoy spending time with. I was kind of saying, I was laying out sort of what I would look for. I'm saying, if I got a woman who had kids, that's fine, but I'm not getting married to a woman with kids. If a woman didn't have kids and she wanted to marry me, okay, she'd have to sign a prenup. Because I wouldn't want someone to easily be able to divorce me and just take half. So if she doesn't want to sign a prenup, I wouldn't trust her. I would think she's not really sincere. That was about the strongest thing I used. Everything else was, pretty standard. I want her to be fit. I wanted to be fun, just basic stuff. But the comment section was just brutal in their response. I'm too controlling. I'm a misogynist, all this stuff. Because I said, I want a woman who's going to be committed to actually staying married to me for the rest of our lives, like the vows. That to the people in the show was controlling, which blew my mind. Like, well, why are you getting married if you don't plan on taking the vows seriously? But it was very clear to me that no one was taking marriage seriously. Marriage was just a stepping stone to to a financial improvement for the women who were in the comment section. So I thought, there is no way I would ever take anyone in this seriously. And some women reached out to me. Almost all of them failed to meet some very basic things that I outlined, and they didn't seem to care that there were obvious issues like you're overweight and you have kids and you want to get married. Well, I clearly said I'm not interested in that. But I did meet one who met my criteria and brought her up. Long weekend, had fun, but it was clear to me that this woman had a boyfriend. Just the way she acted and the way she tried to avoid being caught on camera anywhere we went, which is pretty hard to do in Manhattan. But she went out of her way to avoid being caught on camera. And I made that, I connected the dots. Why is she trying so hard not to be on camera? She doesn't want to be caught in New York. She's not actually supposed to be here. And the only way that makes sense is if she's got a man back home who she's up here cheating on with me, because presumably I probably make more money than him, and she's trying to figure out if she can level up. That told me everything I needed to know about her. I'm like, okay, no way I'm going to ever trust you, because if you're with me, then all you're going to be doing is looking for the next guy that you can monkey branch to. And I'm looking for loyalty, which you just showed me you don't have. In a show where I talked to thousands, I talked to Kendra, but there were thousands of people on the show. One person kind of met the criteria, and they ended up being someone who was disloyal. They weren't married, so I don't think she was married. I wouldn't put it past her now. Basically, she was cheating on her husband by flying up to be with me. And I started to understand something. The kind of relationship that I was looking for wasn't going to be found on that show. That thousands of people there wasn't going to find it. James said, how did that work out? Did you get any responses from that show? Did you go on the date? So that came through a bit ago. So that was a wake-up call to me about kind of what the women, at least in that space, were looking for. Now, all of that said, one of the things that was fascinating, I'd never been on a show. That was one of my first times going on a large platform on YouTube. There were hundreds and hundreds of comments that were made about the show, when it was posted to YouTube. And I read them. I took the time to go through all of the comments. I just wanted to see what people were saying. As I was reading through all the comments, a lot of them were jokes and trolling and all of that stuff. But there was one comment that stood out to me. I don't know if the guy was joking or not, but he said, "Oh yeah, women are scandalous. They are absolutely scandalous." To James, she's just, she was gonna monkey branch. So there was this comment where this guy said, "We all know how this ends, with this guy getting a mail order bride." And I don't know if he was joking or serious, but it triggered something in me because I realized I had never stopped to consider dating someone outside the United States. It had never occurred to me to just look around the world and see what was going on around the world. I always thought of dating as kind of dating women in my city or dating women who were nearby. But traveling to find something was a foreign concept to me until that moment. So I started doing some research, just looking up random things online, looking up divorce rates, looking up, marriage rates, understanding, who was making videos about their life in other places, started finding things Lots of guys who are making content about Thailand, the Philippines, all these places around the world. But the thing that kept coming back to me was the Philippines, where there was no divorce, where I really didn't find many guys. There were a couple. I can count on one hand the number of stories I heard about guys having problems in the Philippines. There were a couple, but there were hundreds of stories of success and only a handful of stories of problems. And some of those problems were guys just being silly and giving all of their money to some woman who they just met a week ago and trusting her to be the woman she said when they didn't have any real reason to believe that she was. Through all of that research, I started to really understand that the Philippines seemed to have something different. Now, what helped me was I'd been to Indonesia before this. Not to meet people. I just went because my sister was there and I wanted to visit her. But Indonesia and the Philippines are fairly close, you know, geographically, culturally. I had a great time in the Philippines. I mean, in Indonesia. And when I was there, I remember thinking there were some very nice women there, young, attractive. I thought, if I was here for longer, I would probably take the time to pursue you because you are the kind of woman I'm attracted to. And you seem to be really interested in me. But I'm only here for a short time visiting my sister. And so I don't want to mislead one of the locals. So, I just kind of hung out, messed around with tourists because that's kind of easy. And everybody knows that we're all here for a short time. So, catch and release. And everybody's playing the same game. As I did all my work, it really started to make sense to me that the kind of woman I wanted, I could probably find in the Philippines. I was looking at stories of guys talking about age gap dating. Guy who's 50 is married to a woman who's 24, and she's happy she's with him. Guy who's 60 married to a woman who's 18, and she's having his kids. There were all these crazy stories about how guys of all ages were finding young, attractive women who were happy to be with them. And I just thought, I don't see this story anywhere else. I see guys going out in the DR and having fun. I see guys going out in Europe and having fun. But I don't see guys getting exactly what they want if they're looking for relationships, really anywhere to the extent that I see it happening in Southeast Asia. In Southeast Asia, they're getting it. They're getting exactly what they want. They're happy, and that woman is happy. And so I decided that I was probably going to explore what it's like to make a trip. Still wasn't convinced that I would do it, but now I'm starting to think I want to make a trip to the Philippines because I'm not going to find the relationship that I want here, but I do think I'll find the relationship that I want in the Philippines. Now, if I'm talking about what I want, if I'm going to talk about what I want, let me kind of set a stand. What's Rush E for me? Perfect. And I thought about this for a bit. If you've ever seen the movie From Dusk Till Dawn, the whole movie's kind of crummy, but the first 30, 40 minutes of it are excellent. Salma Hayek is, the Hollywood beauty who's featured in this movie. And there is a scene where Salma Hayek comes out in this bordello of blood. Won't get into the whole story, but she's dancing with like this snake around her shoulders. And she's wearing, next to nothing. And she's got all the curves and she's young. And I have never seen anyone as beautiful as her in that moment. I mean, not even close. The only thing that comes close is maybe Jessica Alba in Sin City when she was gyrating in that window. But no, Salma Hayek in that moment was perfection. So if I was going to have a standard of what does perfection look like, that would be it. I don't expect anyone to meet that. Salma Hayek doesn't even meet that anymore. She's older now. She's still amazing, but she's not that. That's one of those things that, It's a once in a lifetime experience. And that would be perfect. Difference for me is, unlike what I see with, the modern women who are looking for their rush E, I don't need perfect. That's just, if I had perfect, that's how I would define it. But what works for me is much, 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 much lower. What works for me, so now we're talking like the princess, the prince and the princess in the fairy tale. What would the princess look like for me? Well, let's say she's about 28, slim, pretty, no kids, optimistic, cooperative, fun, energetic. That's a list of, things that would work for me. People could put a lot more things on the list, but if I had that list of things, that list right there, I would be ecstatic. Now, the funny thing about kind of men's lists and women's lists, there was a study that was done. And it basically asked men and women the same question to see their response. And the question was this: if you found a spouse who would give you 80% of what you wanted on your list of needs, how would you feel? When you talk to the men about finding a wife who would deliver 80% of what they wanted, the men were ecstatic. Oh, I'd be blown away if I could find a woman to give me 80% of what I want. When you talked to the women were horrified. They all said if a guy only gave them 80% of what they wanted, they'd leave him. They can do better. So, same level here, two very different attitudes around what it represents. To the men, 80% represented satisfaction. And to the women, it represented you not trying hard enough. And part of what that says, without saying it, is guys are not used to even getting 80% because of how happy they'd be to get it. While women aren't used to getting 80% because they're used to getting so much more. And so if you aren't willing to step up and outproduce, you're a bum in the West. Get yourself over to the Philippines. Maybe you are delivering more than 80%, but what they're asking for isn't quite so crazy. These are women who want husbands. These are women who want to be wives. They want to have kids. They want to have stability. They want to have happy homes. They want peace. I've dated women from the Philippines. They'll go out of their way to avoid an argument if they can. If they get mad at you, I think they call it tampo. Their tampo when they're mad at you is the silent treatment. They don't get up at arms and start to fight. They just don't say anything. And let's face it, as guys, if they give us the silent treatment, then we're going to think, oh, okay. You'll talk to me when you're feeling better. And if that means that I get to watch the games today because you're not going to bother me, I'm okay with that. Talk to me when you're ready to talk to me. I'm watching football. That's the worst that it seems to get over there compared to what you're dealing with over here. Entirely different expectations. Now, there are lots of people who will complain, hey, why are these guys going after these young women? I think they're predators. I think, whatever. I look at them and I say, I don't really care. You can think whatever you want. When women who are, a little overweight and have kids are basically saying they want NBA players, that's their standard. I don't care. Get it if you can. Don't cry to me if you can't. I'm saying to guys, if your idea is a hot young thing who's going to be fun to spend time with, okay, I'm not going to criticize you either. Go get it if you can. The difference is we can actually get it because you can go to the Philippines and you can find it. You can find exactly what you're looking for, but you got to get your passport and you got to make the trip. So if you're looking for something specific, really consider the Philippines if that specific thing is a relationship. You want a wife who won't divorce you, you want a relationship, take a look at the Philippines. And your attitude towards being able to find it is going to change if all you've done is shop in the West. Um, Now, one of the things that was funny for me when I was looking at the Philippines, I remember the moment where I said, "Yeah, I'm really doing this," because I was doing some research. I did like this crummy video. I don't even know if it's still up, but I was looking up airlines and trying to figure out how much it was going to cost to get to the Philippines. How long is it going to take? What sort of airlines would I be able to consider? How much would it cost? I don't remember what I had in my head, but in my head, I thought that it was going to be much more expensive as a flight than it actually was. And when I started looking, I started realizing, hey, it's 24 hours to get there, 24 hours to get back. Okay. Hey, here's how much a plane ticket costs. Okay. And it struck me. See, every year, there's a week every year where my kid is on a cruise with her mom and grandma. It's like this. They do that every year. And I don't like boats, so I don't do cruises. Not that I would with my ex-wife anyway. But I thought, well, they're going to be gone for a week. And then they've got these weekends in front and behind that. So now that's 9 days. And then if I take some extra days, I can basically get 2 weeks worth of vacation and see the Philippines. And I'm not really missing my kid. So I want to do this. That's when I thought it's cheaper than I thought. It's not that difficult. And I need to see this for myself. And that was the moment where I said, I'm going to the Philippines. I don't know what I'm going to see when I'm there, but we're going to find out. And as an aside, I took tons of videos, so there's plenty of footage. You want to know about things you can go do in the Philippines to enjoy yourself? Go take a look. You want to see what it's like to visit Sugbo Mercado, to visit IT Park, Ayala Mall? Yeah, go take a look. I got plenty of video. Happy to answer any questions you have. Parabiology is saying, yeah, I did a ton of research on the Philippines before I travel there and tried to find a Filipino. Again, parabiology knows. Parabiology has found someone special. But what I need guys to understand is you can be like parabiology. You can go find someone special. What parabiology found, you can find. True story. I just posted this, I think yesterday. Miss Cebu, Universal Cebu, I forgot what they called it. Basically, the beauty contest for Cebu is happening in February of this year. Like 21 contestants. And I was really curious because this is what the Philippines is like. And this underscores the difference between the Philippines and the States. I saw that and thought 21 of the most beautiful women in the Philippines are going to be competing to be Miss Cebu. I wondered, am I on their level? I mean, if we were talking about Miss Universe in the States, there's no way she's going to give me the time of day. She's going to want somebody who's making millions of dollars a year, taller, everything. But in the Philippines, I thought, I don't know. And maybe they'll all think, nah, I'm not interested in this guy. But over there, it's a question. Over there, it's like, what if I showed up at this thing? What if I hang out and watch the contest? I'm sure it'd be a fun contest, 21 beautiful women doing going through whatever routines they have to go through as they compete. What if one of the 21 most beautiful women in the Philippines said, hey, I like this guy. I want to see what's up with this guy here. That's an entirely different experience than I will ever get in the States. A beauty pageant winner, a beauty pageant contestant, not something I think about here, but it's something I have a legitimate question about if I'm there. Can I attract that? And I'm not saying I need to, but I would try to. I mean, let's face it. I get a woman who's that beautiful. Of course I'm going to try to do it. I've seen women just walking the streets, working at the mall. Gorgeous, gorgeous. Make your eyes pop out of your head. They're not competing in the beauty contest though. So I want to know, like, just what caliber of woman could I attract? I could be happy with a woman who works out of the shoe store at the mall who was attractive. I met one, was blown away. I saw the 21 contestants for the beauty contest. They're all gorgeous. You can't miss. And so that's the kind of thing you wonder. And that's the difference in the Philippines and what you have access to. So for guys who are struggling here, it's like, look, no, you just need to get to the Philippines. You need to see what's possible. And then you need to build a life. Your focus in the Philippines is figuring out what you want. Your focus in the States is more kind of deciding if you're getting enough to make it worth it. So those are some things to think about. Now, one of the questions I have, it's kind of for the guys who, mainly for the guys who are going to come in and they're going to see this later and they'll have questions. It's really this. Do you really want a relationship or not? Because to be fair, not all women who say that they want to be wives, that say that they want to get married, want to be wives. Not all men who say they want to get married want to be husbands. Some are just lying to have fun. Some haven't really thought through what being the husband would mean. What I can say is, I know what, if I'm looking at someone and trying to figure out, is this a wife or is this a potential ex-wife? I know the things that would be red flags for me. If someone's attitude is, I have to meet all of their expectations and they don't seem to show any interest in meeting any of mine, that's not a wife. It's a potential ex-wife. If she's got a timeline and my job is just to do everything according to her timeline, it's not a wife. Potential ex-wife. She really just seems to be focused on having kids, not a wife. Potential ex-wife. See, the difference is a potential ex-wife just wants stuff and doesn't really plan to offer anything in return. And if I'm looking for a red flag, it's really that inability to appreciate my needs that would make me say, this is not someone I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, because I'm not going to be pouring into someone who doesn't believe in reciprocating. I don't see that in the Philippines. I just don't. I've looked, I've talked to guys who've been. I don't see that story. If you take a look at what's going on in YouTube or TikTok, social media, I don't think you're really going to see that story either. What you're going to see are guys who are happy that they found good women who are wives and that they were the ones who were able to put the rings on their finger. That's basically the show for tonight. But I do want to ask, if you are considering a trip, what questions do you have? What do you need to know to get a passport, get on a trip over to the Philippines? I'll leave that out there. I guess that's for James, because I know Para has already been. I don't know, James. I don't know if you've been to the Philippines before or if you've traveled. James might not still be here. But he is, I see I have two people in. I can't see who they are unless people comment. So yeah, we'll keep this conversation going. There are a lot of things. There are a couple of people who I wasn't sure whether or not they were going to stop in tonight, but maybe they will come through next time, because I do want to build into this conversation the idea about expectations and guys' expectations being too low because they're too focused on what they can get in the States as opposed to looking at what's available in the Philippines. So, question came in from Parabiology. I got some good questions for you to ask. Oh, yeah. Oh, wait. Okay, I got some good questions for you to ask. That can come up in the interview. Okay. So we'll pull those into the interview. Yeah, I'm going to be doing an interview with Parabiology. We'll figure out when to set that up, and I'm looking forward to having that interview and then releasing it. And James has never been. Okay, James. we got to figure out what it's going to take to get you on a plane and over to the Philippines, because I think that if you're there, well, I know that if you go, it's going to be a different experience, simply because the way things happen over there is entirely different than the way they happen over here. Maybe you find what you want, maybe not. But now you'll at least know what the options are. And it's hard to put into words the magic of the Philippines for someone who's never been. It's like describing chocolate to someone who's never tasted it. Sure, I can tell you it's good. Sure, I can tell you it's sweet. But there are certain flavor notes that you've just never tasted before. And you have to taste them to really be able to understand what I'm saying. Same thing in the Philippines. There are things about that culture. There are things about the male-female dynamics that you kind of have to see before you can really appreciate. So, hopefully you get something from this. I want to go badly. Yeah, good. Then let's keep talking, because I want to see guys getting that experience. I want to see guys' eyes open to what's possible over there. It's mind-blowing. And I cannot stress enough how much I enjoyed it, how much everyone I've talked to has enjoyed it, and how much I'm hoping you'll enjoy it. So yeah, I'll be back on Tuesday. We'll keep this conversation going. Hopefully you guys are able to join. And this is the Last Good Man in Jersey, signing out.